onto our aluminum plate, we have to do a little surgery to the amplifier board. So what we do is, the way I did it, I attached some wires to the amp board and got that pretty much ready to hook up to everything else. And then I mounted the amp board and the other components to the actual plate. So the first thing we want to do with the amp board is to take off this 3-prong connector here. I'll zoom in a little bit, hopefully you can see it. This one here with the little black thingy, that's a little jumper. This 3-prong connector has to get pried off. It'll expose 3 little metal prongs, and onto those 3 metal prongs we're going to solder 3 wires. So well, let me see if I can just get a little closer. Pretty much just going to carefully take a razor. A knife would probably be better, a little stronger, but just going to basically try to pry up. Some mild crunching noises going on, but don't let that worry you. So basically get pried up enough, I don't know if you can see that, so you can get a little screwdriver underneath of it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the screwdriver, pry it up, put my finger on the back of it to counteract any kind of back pressure here. Just lift it up, lift it up, lift it up, work it one side to the other. It's a lot easier to do when you don't have to do it for the camera. This makes things a lot harder, but so once you got it pretty much all the way off, you should be able to take a little needle nose pliers. Oh, there goes the jumper pin. And basically just wiggle it off. Okay, there, it's off. I tweaked that one pin a little bit. That's okay. So we've got, so what you're left with is 3 pins. Hopefully that shows up. 1, 2, 3 pins. These are the 3 pins that you're going to connect wires to connect to a potentiometer, so you can have adjustability on the level of the subwoofer. We're going to solder 3 wires to that next. Okay, so we're ready to solder the subwoofer level lines onto the main amp board here to these 3 pins. And I've used my little weighted helping hand electronic circuit board holder to help hold the circuit board in place while I'm working on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get 3 pieces of wire. I used about 24 gauge for this. You want to have, at least the way I did it, I used a green, a blue, and a black wire for this. And since we have pins on, I'm using 2 cameras for this, that's why. Since we have pins that we're trying to attach these wires to just solder a wire to a pin is a little complicated. It's kind of tricky. So what I did was, I kind of figured out a way to do this. I used a paper clip, unbend the paper clip, and strip off about, and these wires are 5.5 inches long roughly, each one of them, but strip off about 1/2 inch of wire and hold it up to the paper clip like this, and then just twist the wire around the paper clip 2 or 3 times and sort of smush it together and take it off. So it becomes, hopefully you can see that, basically it becomes a little tube, and that little tube will fit over these little pins nicely. So I'll do that one more time just so you can see it. I did it, but basically take your paper clip here. Let me adjust this so we're not getting so much light from the edge better. Take the paper clip here and the wire there, and just going to twist the wire around it a couple of times. And just sort of smush it up a little bit, get it sort of tighter. and take that off, and then you have not a lot of contrast, but you have basically what you have is a little tube, and that little tube is going to fit over the wire. So the next step is to just solder these little tubes at the end of these wires over the 3 prongs. So I'm going to try to just put a little solder on this, hopefully do it so you can see it, but not screw it up. It's a little delicate. A little blob there, but I think that's okay. Take a peek with my little magnifier to see if yeah, it's a little blobby, but well, I'm speeding this up just to save some time, but basically hopefully use a little less solder than I did, and make sure that the pins aren't touching, and then put a little bit of heat shrink tubing like I have in the picture in the upper right. That really adds a little bit of extra protection. So I'm ready to solder on the 2 power lines. According to the instructions, I'll post a picture along with this of where it needs to go, but first thing I'm going to do is just tin this lead a little bit here. Got a little blob of solder on this, because what we're going to do is I'm going to just press it to this and solder it on there real quick. If I can see what I'm doing. There's already a blob of solder on there, it shouldn't be too hard. There we go. That one's done. That was real easy. On another solder blob onto this. And I'm going to attach it right to this right here. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm just going to apply some pressure. Get all soft, liquefied. I think that needs a little bit more solder fluid to it. That was a little drier. Let me just put a little bit more. So there's a little bit more on there. Okay, so what you do is you hold on to the board, give them a couple good tugs. If they're on there good, then they're on there good. That's done. Okay, so now I'm going to solder on the 3 wires for the input. This board has an 1/8 inch stereo jack for a signal input right here. Of course, we're not going to use that. We're soldering stuff directly to the board. So there's 3 leads here that we're going to solder wires to. The wires are about 5.5 inches long. I just stripped off maybe 1/8 of an inch off the end of it. I tinned that with a little bit of solder just to help it stick on there. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to put these 3 wires, we're going to solder them right on, quick and easy. We're going to start with, let me start with the black one so I can work my way out, just because it'd be easier to hold. So I got the black one here. Just going to heat that up. So as long as you keep your leads short and tin the leads before you try to solder them on there, this is a pretty easy procedure. It's pretty hard to mess up. Now it looks okay. Now what you want to do again is just give a tug. Give a tug different directions. That one's good, that one's good, that one's good. Okay, they're on there, they're soldered well, and that was pretty painless. Okay, the next step is, this is a noise reduction step. I made several different versions of this amplifier, and several of them had noise issues. And I got some good tips from the folks at the Tech Talk forum, and they said that it would be a good idea to braid the subwoofer potentiometer lines as well as the input lines. So that's what we're going to do right now. When you get done, just throw a little piece of tape on it. It's basically like braiding hair or juggling. So now that I've got that braided, looks pretty good. I'm going to put a piece of tape on it. Flip the thing around so I can see myself. There I am. Put a piece of tape around it so it doesn't come unraveled. And that'll really help as far as suppression of noise. my finished bass MicroB amplifier that I have in my bedroom. I noticed when I got it close to my iPad charging thing that plugs into the wall to charge the iPad, I had a hum. This picked up a hum from that, and it's a switching power supply. Maybe that has something to do with it. But when I turned it off and moved it away, it was fine. So they're a little susceptible to noise, so you want to do everything you can to prevent it. That's why we're braiding this. We're also going to braid the 3 wires for the subwoofer potentiometer. I went through a couple versions of this before I finally got it figured out to where I could get the noise down to where I really couldn't hear it. I was having a lot of hum through the subwoofer channel previous to figuring this out. Thank goodness, and I really appreciate the folks at the Tech Talk forum at Parts Express, giving me their wisdom, helping me out. They suggested going from a 50K potentiometer for the subwoofer level to a 10K, and that made a difference too. So here we have, this is nice and braided, really tight. Well, it's pretty nice. This one's braided nicely too. This is for the input. So those two things are going to resist a lot of noise coming in, at least from that end. So this board is basically ready to be mounted, just like any other component, to our aluminum plate.
That's it for part 2 of the assembly instructions for the MicroB 2.1 plate amplifier system. Next up, we're going to be mounting the amp board and all of the components to the aluminum plate.